Nervous now.
Welcome to the Medal of Honor podcast. My name is Corey, and today I have a guest. I got Sam. Hi, Sam. We've actually met up at a golf driving range, and we hit it off, and we just went through a few.
That's not a pun from you, is that? Hit it off it.
So
I was probably hitting off the T1 killer, so let's not go with that one.
Yeah, but it was brilliant. We good. We exchanged details, and then we just sort of been in touch here and there. And he wrote a Instagram post that was quite inspirational to me. I reached out to him so we can get him onto the podcast. If you would like to just come in and just.
Of course, I mentioned it probably be quite nice. Yeah, the way in which we start this is the way in which our sort of dialogue between ourselves started recently. So I guess just read out the Instagram post that I made, and for me it was on the back of it being World Mental Health Day, and I'd seen numerous people post, and I thought reluctance to really share my story. I thought is anyone going to care? Is it going to help anyone? I thought you know what, do it for myself, do it and if it helps someone along the way, fantastic. But no, so the message I put out, a picture of myself smiling, good vibes to start it before I get into something a bit heavier. But no, so the message reads, I'll go from start to finish without interruption. So a bit late to the party with World Mental Health Day 2020, but just wanted to share some of my story. Mental health, perhaps more accurately illness in my case, is something that's featured heavily throughout my life. From seeing my dad in and out of hospital as a child, through to me not being able to understand why leaving my bedroom for a lecture at medical school became an impossibility. It is real, in spite of my younger self perceiving it as a weakness of character. It is real, in spite of it being popularised in the context of someone just having a bad day and exclaiming they are depressed. It is real, and it requires action on all of our parts. The conversation has begun, but how we finish it depends on what we decide to do now. Certainly a source of recourse for most people to speak with someone, whichever form it may take, text, a call, over a coffee, talk. One of the symptoms I've experienced is a diversion of perception from that which is before your own eyes. You begin to act against yourself, own self-interests, and that's why it's just so crucial at that point to speak and to vocalise how you feel, how you feel and think, in order for someone else to sort of help you see a little more clearly. I do stress this person should ideally be the right person. There are wrong people you can speak to these things about. However, even the right person, not everyone knows how to respond or what to say, not to say, even if they've come from a good place and even if they care about you dearly. And that's why, at that point, I think a visit to a healthcare professional is vital. That might seem scary, but the importance of it is that they will be able to approach it from a level place, from an objective place, where they can point you in the best direction for yourself at that point. My next one, move. Any form of movement brings a productive distraction. Your brain's been working overtime, and one way to put it to rest is to exhaust yourself physically. You start to become too tired to worry anymore. Ironically, for me, the exhaustion brings you to a place of tranquility. Move. Even if it's walking to your bedroom door with it remaining shut, move. Even if this is tensing your muscles from the safety of your own bed, I promise you it helps. There is no one nature for such a complex thing as the mind. Clearly things can help, as I've said, talking, moving, but going forwards, I think an earnest exists for us to be and do better as a society. I must also just add, finally, as a disclaimer, that this is my lived experience of it, and others may take a completely different form to this. And don't mistake my sort of rambling on Instagram and now on Curious Podcast as advice. It's just simply my journey, simply my journey and how I've sort of experienced it. But ultimately, I think let's do better.
It's amazing. When I read that, I was so inspired by the whole thing, and when I reached out, I wasn't sure if he was going to agree, because when you talk about this interview or podcasting, people usually sort of chicken out. But I'm so glad that he's here. Before the actual recording, we chatted nearly now.
Spoke for how long now?
It's been quite a while. We're just talking about different.
Jesus.
That's right, yeah. And we'll be talking about different concepts, where business, life, and everything else. And it's amazing. Sam is an incredible guy.
Listen, I'm not going to be able to fit through the door if you carry. My ego is going to inflate.
But I just want to know more about just 1 second. I'm just going to adjust this mic so it's a little bit closer. Yeah. So I just want to know more, as in terms of school and childhood and stuff like that. Just talk about more about that.
So I think really for me, I describe it as a normal childhood, but what is this? I guess part of that is what you experience yourself, and you then act on that. That's I guess I think for me childhood, I'd say it's normal, but probably not actually when I think about it, when I reflect on it, and I really step into it, and I get one that I mentioned as part of my story. Growing up with my dad, who's manic depressive, part of that meant that he might start to not take his medication, and he might then end up in hospital and not knowing when I'm going to see him next. And I think for me at that point it was that was my normal. However, I felt ashamed of it. I didn't really, at a very young age, got a sense of, not everyone's dad is doing this. Not everyone's dad is in that place. This is the exception rather than the rule for this to be happening. And I guess part of that, I formed that through it not being a nice sensation, it not being pleasant to experience that. Even when he's not in hospital, for me to really worry. I'm talking about 5 or 6. I'm worried about these things. That's playing on my mind as a 5. And at that point, I think you realise, okay, this isn't the norm. This isn't everyone's experience of life. I was very lucky, actually, and blessed that equally, as far as I remember, my mum and my stepdad, Stuart, and I always call him Stuart because I don't. In many ways, actually, for me, that's more of a compliment to call him that rather than dad, because rather than being someone that just has had a kid, he stepped into that role of father. For him, I also have 2 brothers as well. Imagine the man that it takes to step into that situation. Someone, a woman, my mum with 3 kids. You haven't got any kids of your own. He was early 20s at the time. I think now I'm 26. I couldn't even imagine that now. Early 20s, stepping into that situation and going, do you know what? I'm going to be the man. I'm going to step up to the plate. And it wasn't easy for him. My older brother, particularly, I'm sure he won't mind me mentioning. Well, he probably will mind, but it's good to talk about it. He was a shitbag. If you excuse my language, he was difficult. I won't go into too much detail.
But I would imagine that was his way of acting out, because even with a new dad or somebody coming into place, it's...
And to complicate that further though is, so between that, my mum had also met another man who was my younger brother, my stepbrother's dad, biological, and he was abusive. I think particularly to my older brother. So I think with that, any man in his mind, I guess, was seen as a threat.
That's right.
So that was difficult for him as my stepdad, I think. Of course, also for my older brother as well, to have that happen, and then already at that young age have this deep feeling of mistrust.
I suppose part of it was carryover from the issues that he was dealing with your dad already. So he already had something there. So as a means of not wanting to feel the same, because you would have probably we naturally want to connect and want to love, but you would rather repel than experience. I'm not obviously I'm not sure. I'm just
it's an interesting way of seeing it, and it probably reflects the way things are as well, actually. However, at that young age, no different. that's why obviously a lot of stuff does come back to your childhood, because that's your first formation of things. And if it doesn't go swimmingly, if it doesn't tick all these psychological boxes and all of these things, then that's where issues tend to sort of come back from.
That's right.
As distant as it seems to you today, that was your first formation. That was your first idea of love. That was your first experience of someone caring for you. That was your first way of seeing the world.
That's right.
So of course that's important. That's the first way you first learned it. That's the first neural connection you established to that thing.
That's right. Yeah.
So whilst it may not be actively conscious in your mind today, it's important. And obviously, to recognise that, you can then start to work on it and really sort of repair and go in that way. And we're doing our wonderful thing as we were doing before the podcast and running off in a million tangents. I've barely got up to 6 years old, but
yeah,
for me,
that's fine.
I'd rather
it's good to
go where I go.
Yeah, exactly. It's like I think with the spirit of this podcast is that we don't. I never structure anything.
Structure's for boring people.
Exactly. I'd like to just freestyle and go wherever it goes. Yeah, exactly.
But no, so that was perhaps the part that gave me the sense of maybe my childhood wasn't the most normal. But other than that, I was happy. As I described it. I was very sporting, so I played football, eventually rugby, a few difficult periods, one of which was actually I won't delve into depth on it, but when I was playing for one of my teammates and schoolmates passed away at the age of 12 or 13 at the time, and that was difficult. That was very very sad, as you can imagine, but I won't dwell too much on it because I think let's have
it's fine.
More
I think
subjects.
all these are quite important pivotal moments because the moment the fact that we're talking about this, there's a part of you in your brain that is has got connections to pain and it's the fact that you've brought it up. It means that it's all these associations of
it's beginning to become plastic again as well.
Exactly,
and I can start to mend from that.
That's right.
So for me now, I need. I mentioned about the healing thing about talking.
Yeah,
it's very easy to say that. It's very difficult to do it sometimes. Yeah. And to really become vulnerable. Right now, I'm relaxed. I'm more than happy to do this. It's difficult stuff for me to talk about.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's easy. I think the state I find myself in now, let's go with it, let's run with it, let's heal in many ways. And if someone can hear that and go, do you know what, actually, I've found myself in a similar set of circumstances, or if I've been in a difficult place, I can come back from that. I'm not professing to be the finished product.
I think
far from it.
What I found interesting that you said, because we started talking on DMs. And every time I say DMs, I laugh because my kid
sliding into people's DMs and dating stuff.
Yeah. My kids, he always laughs at me. Says, "Don't use that. You can't say that." Exactly. But we're talking on the DMs, and you said something quite interesting. That you said, I got tired of depression or feeling depressed, and that is a pivotal moment because everybody feels like I need to build this island of depression and stay on it, and it becomes them to the point where they feel like, you know what,
it's bigger than me.
Yeah, I'd rather not. And I'm going to build a house, and then I'm going to get a nice sofa, and
it's not great. It's not great. It works.
I'm just going to put flowers and just build everything around,
really
and then
that.
It's something that they just want. Whereas it's an island.
Yeah,
you can just swim the fuck off with the thing. It's too simple, but it's not. I know it's not simple. It's very difficult.
Yeah,
but it's again. Like you said, movement and stuff. There's certain things that you can start building within your life, and structuring, and those are your ways to get yourself. And it will have a pull on you. You always want to feel like but you can work your way to.
I really like that analogy. Actually, like I never thought of it like that. However, I don't like this fact that people find themselves in that situation. Of course, but I just really like that analogy that you use. It really sort of resonates with me. Going, actually, that is a very accurate picture of how things can be for myself as well. the difficulty is, I guess, is it's almost people say these things to you, and it's almost sometimes like it's in another language, or you maybe receive the message, but it just seems like an impossibility. And maybe the stage you're at, it's to leave your bedroom. It's like going to war. That's how it feels.
That's right, yeah.
It does feel that way sometimes. However, just the smallest thing, one thing actually that I mentioned to you. I can't remember if it was on the podcast or not. I'm almost blurring the two one and the same. But there wasn't. I said there wasn't one thing that really sort of over past 2 months have been really big in terms of really sort of come to terms with who I am and what I want to do. And one of those small things actually was, so I go to therapy every other week, and my therapist, I'd usually previously be a very dismissive person to like new things and like spirituality, these sort of movement, talk about body alignment and all these kind of things, So usually I'm like, nonsense. There was one thing she said about your body and being present in it. And one way to do that is to really tense your muscles. I mentioned that in my Instagram post.
That's right, yeah.
Tension, I know no matter how bad things get, I can do that.
Yeah.
I can just literally just escape my thoughts for a moment, just by, as I sit here with you now, just tensing my legs. I can do that anytime. I can do that anywhere, any place. And for me, that was a great comfort actually to realise there's something I can do about it. Not go into, I could sit on the train and do that. Everyone around me, I could be in the most terrible place up there. And that's my escape to some extent. Again, that's not a solution.
Yeah.
But it's just a bit of relief that you might need in that moment where you're not thinking clearly, where you're not seeing things straight. That could be just that brief pause, that brief moment, that brief space that you need from that, that little swim out into the ocean momentarily from your island.
That's right.
You might, again, be pulled back by the tide.
That's right.
And that tide can be strong sometimes.
That's right.
But that could be just that moment, Imagine yourself. So I'm imagining it now myself. You're on the beach, the sun shining down, and that's it. And sometimes I think that's what you need, just to realize that you can swim away and you can start to do these things when the time's right.
I love the fact that you've brought this up, because I've sort of touched upon this on the podcast in some of the episodes.
Yeah. I'll have to listen to more.
The spiritual side is important, and there's this incredible book called The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, and it talks about that whenever you feel overwhelmed and revisiting those thoughts, because we all have this inner voice that will talk. And
you ever sorry to interrupt, but you ever read The Chimp Paradox?
But it's in one of the books I want to read. It's in my library.
Read it. It'll probably be very similar to that inner voice.
Exactly. And the power now is that you have to get into the present moment, because we always leave life either in the future or in the past. And because you're in the past, you're sort of living to go away from the pain from the past, or whatever you're trying to avoid, or you're living in the future because you're not trying to avoid what's happening now because of what's happened in the past. So it talks about this as pain body attacks, and because of those pain body attacks, if you can get your place where you can get present in the moment, and it's spiritual, but in a sense, it's getting to that point where you can actually sort of let go and then be at ease.
Yeah.
Then again, you can use different things. People use chanting. People use.
So for me, the thing that put me off, you hear the word spirit. I mean, at least for me anyway, you hear the word spirituality, and you imagine someone with crystals and
that's right, yeah.
voodoo dolls and all of these. And I think maybe that's one side of it. But if that helps for someone, that doesn't bother me. That's their thing. If they find some sort of solace from that, and they find some kind of relief from their everyday life, more time to them. That's their niche. That's their thing. That's the thing that stops them from worrying about things.
Yeah.
That stops them from shouting at someone or screaming. That's their piece. Let them have it.
That's right.
And if it doesn't impact on anyone else, why do you care?
That's right.
It should inspire you, if anything. But
that's right.
At the very worst, just let them do it.
That's right.
Let them live their life in peace.
It's crazy because I actually believe massively in this spiritual stuff. In
It's
Not-
new.
not-
It's new to me, but
not in the sense of God or whatever, but there is some force that works towards, and sometimes the way we behave, and like I can do an act of kindness in order for me to feel good about myself, or for people to see that I'm a good person, to raise my status, and it's okay to do that. But if you do it in a sense of
depends the place it comes from, doesn't it?
yeah, exactly. So I think you saw my reel when I did the horse. I was heartbroken when I saw the horse abandoned.
Oh yes. Yeah.
And I did something to it. I made sure that it got something to drink, and I was like literally, and it seemed like everybody else had seen it, and I did, and I was. It was coming from a place of I really care about what's going on with this creature.
What can I do?
I'm not doing it to make anybody impressed. It's just, when I came with the Instagram thing, I just wanted to get people to be aware that this is what's happening. And literally a few hours later, and I wasn't even expecting it, I get a lucrative contract slapped on my face. And it's something that I was not even and I think there's a connection
It's where the
between
world's speaking to you.
exactly. And before that, I was like, I really want this contract. And the moment I said, okay, it's not going to happen, I do something, an act of kindness, and pure, just coming from a pure place of, I really want to see this animal have a better place, and something. And it's almost like a.
Maybe it's just a coincidence, but in any case, the worst case scenario is you've done something good.
That's right, and again, this is a lesson I learned from Julian Blanc, where he says, there's this law of attraction. I don't believe. I sort of believe in it.
Do you know what? For me, I've dispelled it up until now. But I'm starting to sort of see the attractive side of that whole, law of attraction. What's the other word people use? You carry on. It'll come to me.
So what it is that, and there's a what we call RAS. So RAS is a reticular activation system, where when you decide on something, you look for supporting evidence. So, like if you decide on a car, if you wanted, for instance, you wanted an Audi, that's specific Audi that you want. You start seeing it everywhere. It was always there, but because your focus has changed, so the power of now only works because when you decide that you wanted to get that thing, you start identifying. Started identifying the opportunities to get you to that position.
There's always been that, exactly. There's always been that same amount of Audis,
exactly,
and then you go, hang on. There's that many around? Have they started replicating?
That's right.
What's going on?
But it's just because your focus is now changed. So when you say, I want to go and get this, there is the power of now works in the sense of that the opportunity is already there. You're blind to the opportunities because now you've decided to go for them. Then those opportunities start appearing, and then you can start identifying them.
The word for manifestation.
That's right.
That was the word that was escaping me earlier. It came to me almost. I didn't want to interrupt you because that actually retook activation system actually.
That's right.
Spoke to as well, but tangents. We love
them. Exactly.
Tangents. So we should call I've got a new name for the podcast. Tangents.
Exactly. But in terms of like, you finished school and then you decided to go to medical school.
Yeah. So,
what was your inspiration for that?
So a little bit actually, and actually that's why I'm glad I mentioned, because I almost wasn't going to touch on my friend passing away. Actually, a small part of it was that because I think I don't know the full ins and outs of the situation. However, I believe he went to hospital because I can't remember if he collapsed or if he's experiencing the symptoms. So it's heart troubles he had. I think it was viral myocarditis, if that means anything to you or anyone listening. Basically, the heart becomes inflamed because of the virus. That's it, or the muscles. So I believe he went to hospital because he'd collapsed, so he was experiencing symptoms, and then he then got discharged. So they maybe dismissed it as something, oftentimes these things can just be heartburn if you have these kinds of symptoms, or it could be, a whole host of things. However, it was more serious, and I think he then went home and must have collapsed again. And obviously, I don't know the ins and outs. To be honest, I don't want to, because I think if I try and imagine it, it would get me quite emotional. But I think he then obviously collapsed again, and rest his soul. It's such a shame for someone so young, such potential ahead of them to pass, and at that point it's very difficult. But yeah, so for me, that was a source of inspiration. I sort of thought, if I'm in that situation and someone comes into my practice or, my hospital and they're experiencing this, I want to try and be that person who I don't. And that, that's no disrespect to the physicians that saw him. They, of course, have the best intentions at all times. However, sometimes we miss things in life. We're human, we make mistakes. And maybe part of my motivation for that was to try and be that physician that saw what was going on with him. From that angle, from the angle of it would be a challenge for me. It would be interesting. No day would be the same. So I thought, you know what, I like science. I'm good at it. Let's use that. It's kind of creative. You can go into a few, surgery side of things and be, just a normal doctor. I say normal doctor, that encompasses so much. A GP, I quite like the idea of that. Eventually have my own GP practice and that business sort of fulfillment side of it. I would have liked that to really, have this really fancy GP practice in the middle of London. It's fancy. So that part of it as well. I'd be lying if I didn't say money wasn't a part of it. Doctors are fairly well paid. My background, not particularly well off. I describe myself as between working class and middle class. Money's always been an issue. The one where you go out for a meal with your parents and just pick from that lot. We're still going out for a meal though. Yeah, it's not that we're that hard up, but I've always felt it. It's always been a consideration. It's always been, money's not the easiest, and I've been embarrassed about that. Honestly, at times it's the fact that I've had to have my brother's hand-me-down trousers, or I couldn't have the newest things, or why your trousers around your ankles, and again, I should be appreciative for these things, but within your environment, it becomes that is your environment. That doesn't, your problems don't minimise because someone has it worse. Actually, I spoke to someone about this recently. I've had this idea for a while, and it's not original, it's not my own, but you apply the logic of, oh, someone has it worse, so I can't complain. You could then, if you apply that logic to happiness, so someone's happier, oh, I can't be happy then. Yeah. So what are you going to do? Just sit in the middle constantly, never feel anything? You're allowed to feel something. Your problems are your own, and they are important. No matter how stupid or silly you might perceive them as, they're your problems.
That's right.
And they're important. They are valid. But of course, with that, you need a sense of perspective. Oh, this person at the nail salon didn't do my nails. I was quite like them. Of course, that's a bit upsetting, and you might be looking forward to that the whole week.
That's right.
But maybe that compared to someone going hungry for a meal, let's have that sense of perspective. So those probably two got most of the motivations for me.
Yeah.
Really, maybe a few more, but those are the ones that come to mind. Maybe part of it actually as well was one of wanting to build an image of myself, and that was for me. So throughout my friends, particularly in sixth form, I was no longer Sam, I was Dr. Sam. And before I'd even had that title, I was celebrating it. Yeah, I was living that life. I'd begin to drink brandy. I think naturally, as soon as that doctor, my handwriting became worse. It literally, and I think you start to put up, and I think for me that was attractive. Because again, as I say, my background, I don't think many people end up as doctors from my background. I don't think people from my school who tend to have one or two go to an Oxbridge University or a really good university, and that was it. It wasn't necessarily. It wasn't one of these schools that just churn them out. You've got 30 people going to Oxbridge.
What school did you go to?
It's Fred's on this Bridgeway Academy now. So it's in Welling Garden. But it's it's one of those as well in Welling Garden. Most people would might be saying is that it's one of those people that you go to Fred's.
Yeah.
They'll pat you down before they'll pat you both in and out, and just going, oh, what's he taking? It's not that bad, but there's a perception that it's somehow one of the worst ones. And funny enough, I actually bought into that because I wanted to go to Stanborough School. I bought into that bit, but I ended up there. So, and I made something of it. I enjoyed it. I made lots of good friends. And then that takes us to the place of looking at university, and so medicine was it for me. So I was like, I'm going to go for it, grasp it. I felt as though it was outreach. My teachers, not to say I would have made it, but they're really pushing for me to, particularly one of them, Mr. Graham. He was really pushing for me to go to Cambridge or Oxford, and I went to the Cambridge Open Day.
Remind me. Okay. Welcome to the Men of Fono podcast. This is part 2 with Sam. Just covering now. We talked about him being at school and the situation that he had at school with his best friend, losing his best friend or his friend from school, and we're just going to find out more about him at uni and how he came up to a position where when he's at the most challenges, but how he actually started working towards recovery. So take it away, Sam.
So sorry, just to be clear, so sort of where I'm at today, sort of what,
Yeah,
the
so
past couple of weeks, what's been going on for me.
when you were at uni, when you were living in London,
when I had that meeting, because I can't remember where we caught up to. Was it where I'd had the meeting with?
I think it's before. So before you had the meeting, you're now living in London. You'd gone to Imperial College.
Yeah. So just so for me, I won't go into as much depth as we did before because we had some technical difficulties. It's his fault. Got too interested in the conversation. So for me, I was at the university. Things should be going good. I'm freshers. Everyone's partying, everyone's drinking, everyone's getting to know each other, and I had all of that to some extent. However, I think when it's sort of the business end of things started, so to speak, or should have started, where you're studying, you're actually working, especially with medical degree. First year, it's not just all fun and games. You do actually also have to work. Funnily enough, to be a doctor, you have to know things about the body. Yeah, believe it or not. So yeah, when that was all coming for me, well, rather it wasn't forthcoming, and I didn't feel able to engage in lectures. I really did start to sort of disconnect from university and all these things. Again, I'm not sure which point we cut out. So I'll introduce a few of the things I said. In any case, why not say it twice? We can always edit it out. No, so for me, I was just really in a place where it was I didn't feel right, but didn't really know what it was. I had my suspicions it might have been related to what sort of my dad with manic depression. I thought maybe am I him. However, I just look at myself in the mirror and not recognise the person looking back at me, and it was really, really difficult for me because equally I didn't want to show anyone that because I was a very social person, a very sort of friendly person, I like to make people laugh, these things, and when you're not that, it adds another layer to it, it adds another barrier for you to.
Is it because you build up a persona so you know?
Yeah. So I said to you about the one about I'd be Dr. Sam to my friends.
That's right.
I was this person, this confident, outgoing person that people maybe would look up to some extent, coming from my background, from my school that's not the best. Didn't tend to go to medical school from high school to Fred's, deemed by most other schools to be one of the worst in the area. So for me, it was that there was very many layers to about being a man as well. We spoke about having to pretend you're okay when you're not, man up. Real men don't cry. These kinds of things came to me. Just get on with it. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps and crack on, mate. Nothing's that bad. You're in a good university. You're well. You're healthy. I thought I was healthy. I wasn't. My brain was telling me something's not right, but I chose to ignore it because that was the easy thing for me to do. So from there on out, it was just a lot of struggle, a lot of very difficult days, day by day, not knowing what was going to happen. So I felt myself sort of losing myself day by day. Weirdly enough, actually, I started to resonate. I don't know, probably might remember from one of his songs, Macklemore. His thrift shop song. That wasn't the one that I was listening to at the time. There's actually a song of his called "Starting Over," and sort of speaks about his addiction. Believe for him it was sort of pro-methazine. You see in America there's been a problem with the opioid epidemic. All this for him it was that. And for me, actually, weirdly enough, I resonated with that feelings of. Almost every time I let these thoughts enter into my mind, that was my relapse. every sort of time I felt sad and all those things, I felt like I was letting people down for feeling this way. I felt as though actually I was actively a part of this, that my actions were, and I guess to some extent I wasn't doing the right things, but I didn't know better, so I shouldn't have been so hard on myself, I think. However, that sort of sentiment of him talking about his addiction, his struggles with it, letting it run down, I was like, actually, I really hear that, I really feel that, and it's strange to really compare the two. And I guess in some ways,
I think I don't. Sorry to.
No,
and
please,
part of it is an analogy that I heard quite recently, actually, and it speaks out because whether it's addiction to drugs or depression or mental health, or there is a part where it's all triggered, and it all usually comes from something similar, whether it's trauma, whether it's from your childhood. So you experience something that is overwhelming, and from that point, exactly, and your reaction is to try and escape from it. And at that point, the guy said, it's kind of like that moment when you decide you want to escape from it. It's like taking in this creature that you don't really understand what it is.
You don't know this.
So you start feeding it and feeding it, and
you're not necessarily really feeding the right things.
That's right. You're not sure. You're not sure what's going on. Yeah, you're not sure what it is, but you keep feeding it. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and then at some point, it starts biting you and it starts attacking you, and every time you try and stop it and try and get rid of it, it comes back, and then it just keeps coming back.
Comes back
exactly. And I thought that was quite telling, and it goes with mental illness. It goes with we don't realize it, but we're like you said, you're part of that thing, and you it's up to you to do something about it. And
that for me, though, actually, you bringing that in, that sort of analogy actually does sort of make that link clear in my mind as to why I connected with that at that time, that sort of that feeling. And I guess as well, it's your making sure we're not cutting out.
That's right,
that's your way of so for me, I wasn't actively taking drugs. I was drinking to numb it a bit, I guess. But my way of escaping was mostly just through hiding. That was my response. That was my opiate.
That's right.
Yeah, that was my relief, just to hide, to really not be seen. That was what I was doing. So I was addicted to that. I was addicted to that sort of lonely place that I put myself in. Didn't enjoy it. I'll tell you. I'd imagine most addicts would tell you they don't enjoy taking drugs, but they have to do it. That's their mechanism. That's their coping strategy.
Right.
That's their way of it. And actually, through my experience, I understand people better who have these kinds of struggles. Before, I'd be very judgmental. I still with most things, that other things, I do hold prejudices. I'm not perfect.
Yeah.
But I want to where I can challenge them. And that's my thing. I understand a lot better. People don't necessarily take drugs just for the sake of doing it for enjoyment. It's that escape. I also actively did. So it's not really the most helpful thing to bring heavy judgment on that person, or we'll talk about this another time as well, to criminalise that.
That's right. Yeah.
I think there's better ways of doing it, but that's the way the world is. Right?
So that's right. And I guess in your sense, in terms of like being as a man, what was the factor in terms of coming out and actually saying to somebody that I'm feeling depressed? What was the challenge?
So just numerous layers to it. Sort of that was just I said to you about it being, the whole thing being a wall, all these different things going against me, and that's just one brick of it. That sort of masculinity side where I have to be brave and have to be strong. But you remove that brick, the others are still there. You're probably not going to get through to the other side.
Yeah.
So it's still going on. But that definitely was. It's still an important part of it. That sort of resilience. I have to be alpha to just get through it. I have to, I can handle it myself, and if I don't, that's going to just add to my problem. If I, if I accept the fact that I can't get by on my own, what am I as a man? What message does that send out? Slowly, I've realised actually the most alpha thing you can do. If you really want to obsess over this, the alpha male, make yourself vulnerable.
That's right.
Of course, you need to do it in a sensible and safe way, especially if you're not prepared for the fallout from that.
Yeah.
Because that's one important thing. It's all well and good encouraging people to speak in these things, but if it's in an environment where people might not respond in the way you're prepared for, you end up with responses and things that you can't cope with. That's going to only make things worse for you.
That's right.
I promise you. That's why doing it in a safe way is the best way. However, if you feel like you've reached that stage, you really, really want to be therapeutic for yourself as well as others, that making yourself vulnerable to people. This right now for me, I'm making myself very vulnerable.
That's right.
The Sam of even a week ago probably be like, oh, I'm not going on this podcast because it exposes myself. But if you can do that, you're starting to really, really push yourself, really, really find out about who you are. And you can do that if you can manage that. So for me, that was another brick of wall on masculinity.
I think that's the most interesting thing about what you've mentioned is that vulnerability is
key.
Is key, and it's what makes you strong. So Superman isn't Superman until you introduce kryptonite. So the fact that something makes him vulnerable amplifies how much power he's got. Batman isn't Batman without the death of his parents. I use this example because I'm an absolute fan.
I'm not massively into like superheroes and all that
stuff.
So
I'm a massive fan of Batman.
That Sam guy is disinteresting. I get the message.
Yeah, I've got socks.
You're real nerd with it
then. With Batman, like even my kid, every time she sees Batman, she's like, look.
You're
Dad.
more interested than she is.
Yeah, she's like, oh my God, this is Batman. Yeah. But it's one of the things that I love about it is the fact that what makes them superheroes is the fact that they can be vulnerable. And I know it's fictional.
Yeah,
but there is a lot of truth.
A message there.
There's a lot of truth in it that being vulnerable is what is. In fact, even before we started recording this, we're talking about love and intimacy. The real secret to intimacy is actually being vulnerable. We don't drop enough barriers to let somebody in order to.
And that's the root of a lot of people's problems, mine included.
Exactly. I mean, everybody. I still go through it, even though I know.
This.
Exactly.
It's one thing knowing something. Do as I say,
not as I do.
Exactly. Isn't that how the saying goes? Do as I say, not as I do.
That's right. So it's only up until this year, and after about 9 years with my missus, that I've actually started really discovering that I have to be vulnerable, and I've been experiencing our relationship in a different way. And again, before that, I thought we were okay.
Yeah, but until you've seen the other side.
That's right, exactly.
Can I just make myself even more vulnerable?
Yeah.
I really need to go for a wee. So can we have that on air, on record?
So I'll just continue rambling on here. Then.
I thought, you know what? I thought I'd hold it and it would create, because I've been running off on tangents. I thought it'd create a sense of urgency for me where I go, right, I have to get to the point. It's reached a point where I'm still rambling, so let me go for a wee.
That's cool.
Pause.
But yeah, I'll just continue talking then, because
you carry on. I'll go.
But yeah, so it becomes very important to actually be able to discuss and talk to somebody. I guess Sam was talking about that he went through uni and he got to a point where he needed to speak to somebody, and it was actually not him that decided to do it. He told me that circumstances got him to the point. I think we alluded a lot more on this when he comes back, that sometimes we get into this situation where it's very difficult to speak to somebody. You're struggling. You don't have anybody to talk to. You've got this persona that you've built. You've got this lots of friends that are speaking to you over your phone, and you've got all these notifications going on. But really, on the inside, you're struggling, and you don't really know how to speak out to somebody. And it's really important to be able to speak to somebody and actually open up and say something to somebody and say, you're struggling. But we tend not to form relationships that help us to be that open to somebody or be that vulnerable to somebody, because we don't want to be judged. And a large part of the reason why you are where you are is because you don't want to be judged. You don't want somebody to see you as weakness. And we did mention this before, that mental health, and you look at it, it looks like everybody thinks of it as at the other scale, in terms of that when you talk about mental health, you think about schizophrenic, somebody running on the streets naked and stuff like that. But really, there's different dimensions to it, and it's people that suffer it in all different ways, and it's all triggered by all different things. And sometimes what causes depression is different between people. So sometimes it's just the lack of resolution with the past relationship, or it's like a resolution between whatever it is. There's something that has happened in your life that has caused you to come and get to this point, and you're not able to cope, but you're not looking for somebody to speak to, and it becomes important for you to speak to somebody. And one interesting thing that Sam alluded to on the messages that we're exchanging was the fact that he said that he got sick and tired of being, in that state of depression. So he moved from that, and we used an analogy for it, and we said, it's like being on an island, and most people would generally go to a place where they, if you imagine depression is an island, they would be on that island and it's deserted, and because of that depression island, they would try and get some accommodations of some sort. So they'll build up this shack or somewhere to stay, and then they'll Sam is back. So I was just sort of talking about speaking to somebody and just the state of mental health, and the different stages that everybody assumes mental health is to do with schizophrenic.
It's not necessarily that one angle to it.
That's right. Yeah, they see, because people imagine somebody going crazy and straight jacket and stuff, and it's not. It affects people differently. Yeah, and I think depression is like just a silent thing that somebody can be smiling, and it's almost like that face of the clown that he's smiling, but
you ever seen the film Joker?
Yes, I watched it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So again, I'm not massively into it. I saw that there, and like that, feel that there's persona behind this sadness, and like actually, there's a lot. And you talk about like mental illness as well. Like it has to be that. Everyone has mental health. Everybody does. You say 1 in 3. In fact, 1 in 3 people have suffered from these at one point in time. I think actually it's a lot higher. In any case,
I think it's
in any case, all of us have mental health.
I think it's a spectrum. I do believe that.
We sit on that scale at some point. It might just be the tiniest bit, and you've got the skills and the utilities and resources to go, I'll bounce back.
That's right.
However, some people don't.
And
or maybe the things that are pulling weighing them down are just too much, and for all the resources in the world, they can't deal with it.
In fact, that's actually the main thing, and I think for me that was one of the biggest shifts in terms of my relation. And I don't know why I'm keep bringing about it.
No, please. It's your wife, you love her.
The thing that makes the difference is what I realized is that when I got trauma, because everybody has some sort of trauma, and when people think of trauma, they think of it as in sexual abuse or whatever, or a crash or something so massive.
Major.
But it's just a time when you were so scared as a child, and you decided that you didn't want to feel that pain again. Yeah. So what it could be, something freaked you out when you're coming from the toilet in the dark.
Yeah.
It could be the case that you saw your mum having a divorce and the pain that she was going through, and you don't realize it's trauma. But somebody's got some trauma. It could be your first boyfriend, first girlfriend, whatever. That first breakup could have traumatized you in a way that you want you to escape. Now, the difference between everybody else is that they've been given coping mechanisms for a traumatic event. So if my mom had recognized that my mom, she when she was getting divorced, my dad threatened to kill us as children. So we had to escape from him and stuff like that. So that was a traumatic event that I did not deal with. She didn't know how to equip me for the rest of my life to deal with it.
And that's the thing as
Yeah.
well. So there's two things going on there. Of like, at first all people might not recognise it, but equally as well, people might recognise something's going on, but just not have any clue because they themselves have had no, your mum in that situation.
Exactly.
She's never had that. Anyone had that before, and
That's right.
in any case as well, you also need to see her trauma.
That's right.
If she's in a situation where she might, she might have all these ideas, resources, all of these things that, what's the best thing to do. But if she's also suffering her own trauma,
That's right.
how's she going to be able to access those and make sure that you can access those kinds of things?
That's right. And because of that, that's my own personal story. But my wife will have your own personal story, and you as a listener, you got your own personal story.
Yeah.
And that's why everybody's on a spectrum in terms of mental health illness, because we're all suffering and we're all medicating in some sort of way, and we're all escaping in some sort of way. And that's why when you left, you said being vulnerable is the most noble thing, it's the most powerful thing.
Yeah.
It's true, because if you can turn around and say, I'm struggling, now everybody will look at it and say, oh, you left medical school, you did this and this, and they think, oh, that's weakness. But it's not weakness. The fact that you've stood up and said, you know what,
your weakness becomes your strength.
Exactly.
Or what you perceive as weakness becomes your strength.
Well, now that you know that that's what it was, you've started taking a handle of it. You've got such a massive opportunity to actually enjoy life the way it is. Whereas without having to medicate, without having to, you now got a handle of this monster per se that we said before. And yeah, well, as the rest we were talking about, before you.
We love that again.
Yeah.
The digression is just what we do here. But no, where did that? So it was a med school, and disconnect from who I was, and so again, one of the things I'm not sure we picked up. So if I'm a broken record, then I do apologise.
That's all right.
The one of when I literally just could not engage in my lectures, I then started to play a game with myself. The one I said about being on the central line when I was going home from university, and I set myself a challenge of trying to remember every single central tube station stop from Notting Hill Gate to usually Oxford Circus I'd change at, and I couldn't remember them all, and that became a battle. That became a war of trying to remember these stations. You can't. How are you ever going to do anything? How are you ever going to remember? That for me just flagged up that level of cognitive decline I had, where I just literally could not remember. It was 5 or 6 stops.
Yeah,
and I just could not remember that. For some people that might be a possibility in normal day life. I understand, but for someone like me, who would pride themselves on their ability to remember things and to understand things, to know things, to learn things, it became a case of you're useless because you can't remember this. You're never going to be able to help anyone for as much as you try and want to, all the will in the world. Won't ever be able to do those things. So something very small and very silly like that I used to play myself. It's
crazy.
Big for me. But equally, it wasn't nice, but I didn't know what to do about it. I was just like,
I think because I don't know if it stopped because it was 30 minutes. So
it stopped again.
No, it's going to be. We've got 7 minutes, so we're going to start trying to. We'll do a crescendo.
So we've got 7 minutes.
We've got 7 minutes to do a crescendo.
I need to pee again. I have that in the mind.
So, in terms of somebody who's listening to this, what's your advice in terms of setting? Yeah.
So my advice, again, I'll try and do this quickly because last time it took a hell of a long time. That's why you give me this glare of hurry up, Sam. Looking at his watch, tapping it. So for me, the first thing is to really sort of validate your own feelings and go, do you know what, actually, regardless of how I perceive this to be a problem, I should, for me, I shouldn't be unhappy because I'm in medical school and I've got all these things going for me. It doesn't matter, just legitimize them within your own mind. Just to say, do you know what, yeah, I'm feeling rubbish. That's all that matters. You're feeling rubbish, that's okay. Whatever the cause that is, that's okay. You don't have to compare it to other struggles just to go, you know what, that's what I've got going on at the minute.
Yeah.
There we go. That's all there is. You need to legitimize that in your own mind, because otherwise you just blend it with all these other things and it just becomes a mess, really. It becomes a complete mess and you don't deal with it then because it's just this really sort of vague concept. So legitimize it. You're feeling this, that's it. don't have to explain it. You don't have to justify it. You don't have to reason with it. You're feeling sad, or whatever it may be, whatever you're feeling or not feeling in some cases. Yeah, that's the first step for me. Legitimize it.
Sorry, it's interesting you said justifying it, because that's
Yeah, you don't have to.
justifying is what we're talking about, the island island of depression. You start building,
You're there.
you start building
you just
comfort.
ended up there.
Justifying it is just building that comfort to staying in that same
exactly.
place here.
And it's just imagine you've just been plucked and just dropped on this island. Like, that's it. That doesn't really matter. Everything else that's gone on before that, you're there now.
That's right.
That's where you're at.
Yeah.
So what good is it going? Oh, but I got there on the boat, and then I took the bus, and then the ferry, and
That's right. Yeah.
you're there now. Let's just accept that. So for me, yeah, legitimize it, and then after that, again, go back to my Instagram post. Talk. Like, I can't say enough. Just talk, because your perception's narrowed. You are within your own bubble, and it's. I think actually, depression, mental illness can actually almost be seen as a cancer of the mind, a cancer of thinking, to put it. It just proliferates, and these ideas that aren't good for your body, much like a cancer, creates cells that aren't good for your body.
Right, yeah.
And they harm you, and they work off of each other, they feed off each other, they spread. It begins to affect your body. You're tired, you're lethargic. Things that didn't ache before now ache, and that actually, through talking, you begin to sort of just tap into other people's perspectives, so you're seeing things better. Again, as I said already, it's best for that to be the right person, but not everyone has that. And even if they do have the right person, that right person might not have experienced this thing that you're going through. So for them, as much as they want to help and as much as they care about you dearly, they might not do it the right way. So you, at that point, want someone objective. You want a healthcare professional who will at least be able to recognise what's going on with you and point you in the direction. Again, that's scary. That is very fucking scary. Someone that's struggling, and someone that doesn't want to make themselves be seen, and to be seen by someone like that. They know and they understand.
Would you quickly, actually, the actual going to speak to somebody, like you said, it's the first point where you admit.
Yeah.
So that admission is that's the biggest barrier.
Again, it's a further legitimization of what it is you're going through. You're really then at that point going, okay, there's an issue. So not only have you said it to yourself by going, I have a problem. You're going to someone. You're not denying it anymore. You're not distracting yourself. You're going, right, there's an issue. It's not the end of it. Believe me, that is the beginning. That's your starting point. But to get to that point, for many people, myself included, it's huge. Yeah. Huge. And to even as well, my position, I've been in that place a number of times where I've had to force myself back to the GP, or be forced back to the GP by family or whoever.
Yeah.
That you can be in that moment and have these admissions but still deny it. Just be like, I was bad for a few months. Yeah. For me, it's been about a few years.
Yeah.
So you really need to do that. That's crucial. It's scary, but it's crucial. And it's one of the first steps. So that for me, talk, end up at your GP. They might not be the best GP, but they have an awareness of it. They have an objectivity of it. They have, there are guidelines in place. Most people these days have at least somewhat small awareness. Just your lay person has a somewhat small awareness of what's going on with these things. However, your GPs will definitely be able to objectively speak about these things.
Amazing. So we're going to wrap it up here. Yeah. And guys, if you want to learn more, you can join the Men of Wonder Facebook group, as well as if you've got any question, you can send your messages on Instagram. Kuri Mahamba and Sam Harris.
I didn't realise I was going to have to plug myself.
But I'll put the description in the description. I'll put our details. So if you've got any questions, we're here to if you've got any questions, then we'll be able to speak to you. In fact, it was 30 minutes, so I can see
you nailed it.
The time has gone red. So that's why it cut out. So I think it must have cut out just because it only takes us.
Well, do we miss something again? Or
No, we're all good. So
good
So they've recorded this. So thank you very much for listening, guys, and hopefully this has been helpful. And we're definitely gonna have Sam back on again.
I hope so.
Because we've been sharing so many concepts. So fantastic. Thank you very much.